Hello and welcome to Saints Live, and we're here to give you pre and post match coverage of tonight's Premier League match against Arsenal at St Mary's. And we have got loads coming up for you, haven't we, Kenzie?
We do indeed. It's going to be a good one. And we are sitting 2 metres apart as well. We're following the social distancing rules. Yes, we've got loads to look forward to in today's show. We will be hearing from the boss ahead of tonight's game against the Gunners. We'll be talking all things Nathan Redmond. We want to hear from you, the fans, as always, as well, of course. And we have our 2 guests joining us on the show. They were with us last week. They're back again today, and they'll be with us for every upcoming fixture for the remainder of the season. It is former Saint Dean Hammond, and a man who covered the Saints for 18 years for the Southern Daily Echo. It's Adam Leitch. Guys, great to have you back. I imagine it's been a very busy week taking in lots of football.
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of football. I'm not sure I've watched like many whole games. It's been like a kid in a sweet shop. There are so many games that I've just been picking in and out of matches all the time, but also kind of waiting for a game to really kind of light up as well. But there's been a lot going on. I've also been trying to watch all of Saints' opponents as much as I can as well.
Yeah, very similar. It's good that the football's back. We've all missed it. It's nice to see it. Like Adam said, the games have been different. Not quite the atmosphere we're used to, not quite the excitement we're used to, but I think the players are getting used to it, the fans are getting used to it, and we're getting used to it. So I think it'll improve every week as we move forward.
Well, it's great to have you back, chaps. But let's dive straight into it. We've got loads to get through. First up, we're going to talk about new captain James Ward-Prowse. He wore the armband for the first time last week against Norwich. Now, Dean, you saw Prowse as he was coming through into the first team. What kind of person is he?
A genuine guy, really nice man. He's honest, he's hard-working. Enjoys his football. He's very ambitious. Always saw him as a potential leader. When I was at the football club as captain, and saw him coming from the youth team and reserves as it was then. A player that had leadership, led by example. So really good to see him wearing the armband. He loves playing in Southampton. So really good appointment, I think. I would suggest he's going to be a Saints captain for many years to come.
Adam, you've spoken with Prowse many times. Certainly from a personality perspective, on and off the pitch, he's exactly what you'd expect from a captain. What is it away from the pitch, though, that makes him such good captain material?
Well, he's always been a real leader, I think. That's the thing that kind of strikes you about him. Even as a young man, he's like almost like ahead of his years in terms of his maturity as a man. You forget really, because he's still quite young, how experienced he is. I mean, he's played an awful lot of Premier League matches now. Yes, it's taken him a while to kind of get into the full stride of being a first team regular and cementing a place, but he's come through the ranks at Southampton. I think that's really important. Fans obviously love a young player that's kind of come up, who understands the ethos, the culture of the club. I mean, he might have been brought up in Portsmouth, but I mean, he's a true Southampton boy now. I just think that the kind of understanding the culture of a club is really important. You often see the best managers are the ones that kind of get it. They get the level of the club, they get the fans, they get the culture. And obviously Prowse's come through that system from the age of 8, I think, in the academy. And has just always had that grounded, level-headed presence, and it sort of makes him kind of a natural leader for the club. And it's felt like for many years, despite being a young man, he has been the captain in waiting, and now he gets his chance.
Now, Dean, you've been a Saints captain. What makes a good one?
I always thought what the approach I had was to lead by example. I think there's different variations of captains. You get captains that are loud, that are very vocal, that lead their voice. I was always more to the approach that I would lead by example with my performances, with how I conduct myself on the training ground. I would set the standard, I would set the tempo in training, and that would set the tone for maybe a game on a Saturday. So being a captain, there's different ways you can do it. You can only be yourself, you have to be individual in how you do it, but I was always very much honest with the players, honest with myself, very dedicated, cared for others, cared for the football club, And to be a captain, I think you have to put others before yourself. You have to really think of the team. And that, again, like I say, there's different ways you can be captain, but that's how I approached it. And it seemed to be pretty successful.
And Prowse got his time as captain off to a flying start, really, with that huge win against Norwich last week. But it's not always going to be plain sailing, is it? There are, of course, going to be difficult periods as a captain. As you know, Dean, you did have a fantastic career at the club. But if you had to kind of pinpoint a specific moment when it wasn't so easy, what were the kind of difficult moments that you did have to face as captain?
It's an interesting question, really. I mean, in Southampton, obviously we won a lot of games, we were very successful. I'd probably say the hardest part is proving yourself to the other players, proving yourself to the group. Because one, you have to prove yourself as a player, and then you have the added responsibility of proving yourself as a captain, that you're going to lead the group. You know, they look to you if there's issues in games. You have to motivate players, you have to obviously keep a calm presence. You need that little bit of aggression as well when you're on the football pitch. But, you know, specific times, it was difficult when I came in to start with. You know, Calvin Davis was captain, and I got given the armband, which was, you know, I had to adapt to that, and I had to prove to the others that I was worthy of it. So no major issues when I was captain at Southampton. It was more prove myself as a player and proving yourself to the group so you get accepted for both roles.
Now, Adam, I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable position, but you did cover the Saints for the best part of 2 decades. What are your reflections on Dean's time as captain?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Be nice, Adam.
Yeah, it's like when you have to give the players the marks out of 10 in the paper, and then you see them the next day. It's one of those. Yeah, well, I mean that team. I mean, Dean obviously joined Saints League One minus 15 points at that stage. But it was a team that sort of had leaders in the spine of the team, and that was really important. Obviously, you had Kelvin Davis in goal. As Dean said, he had been the captain, and obviously a huge presence at the club. Jose Fon at centre-half was obviously important player and a big character. You had Dean in the centre of midfield, and then you had Ricky Lambert leading the line. Once that team was kind of fully assembled and up and running, you had real leadership through the spine. But kind of, I think, most people would accept that sort of a centre-half or central midfielder is a more natural position to have a captain. And my memories of Dean is that he led by example, really. He was that kind of guy, somebody I've got a lot of admiration for, because one of those people who just worked tirelessly to always produce the best out of themselves they could. They didn't just rely on their natural talent. They actually grafted and worked hard, and sort of every day, every game, wanted to be the best they can. I think if you're setting that kind of example for your teammates, then it's a very contagious situation for everybody to want to follow. And obviously Dean led the club through one of the most successful periods in his history as captain, and really I guess the results spoke for themselves as to what he did and what impact he had.
You handled that
nice,
impeccably well, didn't he, Adam, there? Well, we've heard from you guys. We're going to introduce the fans to this now because, of course, we love hearing from you guys at home. A few predictions already coming into us. Ethan thinks it's going to be a 2-0 win to the Saints. He thinks Ings and Redmond will be the goal scorers tonight. We've got a comment here from Chester, who's watching on YouTube, watching from Southampton. Come on, you Reds. We've got another comment here saying, watching from Romsey. Good afternoon to you, JRH18. Some very funny YouTube names, aren't there? Yeah. Simon is also joining us. He says Arsenal will win 3-0. I'm going to have to disagree with you there, Simon. Fernando Felix is also watching, and he says good luck from Brazil. Thank you for your support. So good when we have support from all over the globe, isn't it, Steve?
Indeed, yeah, and keep those comments coming in. Now, we've just got over an hour until kick-off at St Mary's, but we want to hear from our faithful leader, Ralph Hasenhüttl, and we spoke to him a little earlier on.
So it's been really interesting to see how each team has adapted coming back in such unusual circumstances. How pleased were you with the way your players responded in that first game at Norwich?
I think we also had the first 15-20 minutes where we tried to find the game. It was not perfect. But after this, I think we did it quite well. Good job. And I was happy to see them winning.
We know Musa is still suspended. Is Shane Long now available, and are there any other fitness concerns?
No, the guys are fit all, and also Longy trains now with the team and is available for the weekend.
When you look at the difficulties Arsenal have had recently, do you see this as a real opportunity to take points against them? And are they a team whose style perhaps suits Southampton?
Still a team with a lot of quality and always difficult against the top 16 to get something. But we don't see a reason why we cannot go there in this game with a lot of self-confidence and respect, but try to bring our game on the pitch. And I think this is the target we have.
3 points, of course, would take you to 40. How much of an achievement would that be to get to that target with 7 games to go?
Yeah, I think we don't have the feeling that we are safe, but we also don't have the feeling that we must look back. So let us look to the opportunity we have of getting 24 points. And I think when we play in a way that we really are shown the good movements we have shown in the last game, then everything is possible. And I think we can cause every club problems, every squad problems, and this is what we want to do.
So great to hear from the boss there ahead of tonight's clash against the Gunners. But I suppose before we bring you the team news at 5 o'clock, the big question is, does Ralph stick to the same team as the side who faced Norwich, or does he change it up? I know that last week, Dean, you said that you're traditional and you like to keep a side the same if they've won. But Adam, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I guess a lot for me depends on how fit Shane Long is. I would be tempted to bring Long in and maybe give Obafemi a break, but it depends really whether Long is fit enough. And of course, the other thing that Ralph's got to take into account is the fact they've got another game on Sunday. Now, I kind of always think, well, you go for the win in the game you've got, and then you worry about the next game when you get to it and see what state the players are in. But that, to be honest, that would be the only change that I would consider. But of course, the unknown is just, Shane's come back this week to training. How fit is he? And I think that will be a key question and something for Ralph to think about, whether he can realistically throw him straight back in or leave him on the bench.
Yeah, we obviously saw Michael Obafemi start against Norwich last week. We'll find out in a minute whether he's going to start again this week. But what did you actually make of his performance?
Well, I think there was a lot to like about it, but he's obviously got a lot of learning to do as well. I mean, there was it's those final moments for him really, which is difficult for a young player, and especially a pacey young player who's always moving at speed, to kind of negotiate. You saw the sort of the slice cross early on. He got a good 2-on-1 situation when he should have squared to Ings and the defender shut it out. But then you also see the time when he does get it right, and obviously he got his head up and squared the ball to Redmond, who scored and sort of polished off the game, and that's kind of what he can do. He's a very destructive player because of that pace. He's a huge outlet for Saints, but part of his learning as a young man is sort of growing in maturity, I think, and learning the right times to pass, to shoot, to cross, having the composure to execute it. And that, for him, that's all part of the learning curve and all part of the journey that he's on under Ralph.
Well, really, I think that will be the biggest question on everyone's lips, whether Michael Obafemi will keep his place in the side or whether Shane Long, who's back in contention, will come back into the team. I'm not going to come to you, Dean or Adam, because we will be breaking the team news in about 20 seconds, so I don't want to have to interrupt you before we do. But, as I said, it will be interesting to see what lineup Ralph has gone with today. OK, so the team news is in. I can reveal that the Saints' first 11 for tonight's game against Arsenal is as follows. In goal, Alex McCarthy. The back four, Jan Valery, Jack Stevens, Jan Bednarek and Ryan Bertrand. The midfield, Pierre Højbjerg. Our captain, James Ward-Prowse. Stuart Armstrong and Nathan Redmond, both with goals last week, of course, and Michael Obafemi and Danny Ings up front. The Saints substitutes then, Angus Gunn, Carl Walker-Peters, Yannick Vestergaard, Jake Vokins, Oriol Romeo, Will Smallbone, Nathan Teller, Shay Adams and Shane Long. So there we go, we've answered the question we were longing to know the answer to. Shane Long does start on the bench, Obafemi gets his place. Initial thoughts on that side? Dean, we'll start with you.
I think it's a good decision. I think the team's performance last week was that good. They deserve to keep their place. I must admit, after the game, I was excited and maybe a little bit naive that a manager sometimes has to adapt for different opposition. They bring different challenges. Playing the same team, they played with such good discipline, such good rhythm, created chances on the break, looked really fit and strong, which surprised me because of the break they had, and their finishing was exceptional. So, there was real balance in the team, in the same team. They're building understanding time between themselves, building different partnerships around the team now. So I'm happy that it's the same team, and I think they're going to bring a lot of challenges to Arsenal, and Arsenal are going to be it's going to be a difficult game for Arsenal because Southampton are going to be full of confidence today.
Yeah, they certainly will be, and it seems that everyone watching along at home as well is very pleased with the way Saints line up to take on Arsenal. Alfie has said 3-1 to the Saints. Leo Futcher watching on YouTube is going for a 3-2 win to the Saints tonight. He thinks Ings will bag 2 and Redmond to get the 3rd. And then Reese is also joining us on our live stream. He's going for Saints win, Ings to get a hat-trick. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, well, speaking of Redmond potentially grabbing a 3rd, today marks 4 years as a Saint for Nathan. So let's have a look at some of his best bits here.
Wrong way, didn't get there. Redmond shot!
Some great goals there, and as we said, today marks his 4th anniversary of signing for the Saints. Adam, you've watched him on multiple occasions. How would you assess the last 4 years for Nathan?
Well, I mean, it's not been smooth sailing. I think that's fair to say. He's had his ups and downs for sure, but he's kind of come through that and matured greatly as a player, and I think that's really the mark of him. As a person as well. I mean, he's a very solid character. I'd say that about him as well. He really did struggle a little bit to start with. And I think he sort of had a bit of an idea really when the fans started to get on his back. He's one of those players, I think, because he gets the ball, he runs at defenders. There's always that sort of disappointment when those players kind of get dispossessed and then the other team launches a counter-attack, so on and so forth. Whereas actually what Nathan needs to do is he needs to have the confidence to continue to run, to continue to, if he loses the ball, to go back again and again and again and try. And he lost that for a while. The Saints fans got on his back. Obviously, there's no great secret about that. He's talked about it quite openly. I think Tottenham Boxing Day 2017, the 5-2 defeat there was quite chastening. I mean, he was booed by thousands of Saints fans, and then that kind of continued. He dropped out of the team because, I think mentally he was just so shot away by the fact he was getting a lot of stick every time he played. But all credit to him, because at that point in your career, I guess you go one of two ways. You either think, sod this, basically. What do I need this? I've got loads of money. I don't need all this abuse. Or you go away, you think about your game, you work out where you can improve, and you come back and you try to win everybody back over again. And that is what he did, and very impressively. And to be honest, he hasn't really looked back. He started to look a lot better under Mark Hughes, but without really delivering goals. And then Ralph was just taking him on again to a new level. And I think really the thing that I think about with Nathan is not just his ability, but as I say, it's his character as well, because that's a hard situation for a player to come back when you're getting such stick every time you get the ball from your own fans. To come back from that and become a fan's favourite, win fans player of the year, club player of the year, Echo player of the year, all that kind of stuff, and become a regular and a fan favourite, that's a real mark of character for me.
Adam, you mentioned there that Nathan's become a new player under Ralph, and it's a really interesting point because in the 1.5 seasons that Ralph's come in, Nathan's scored 14 times, and in the 1.5 seasons before that, he only bagged 1 goal. So, Dean, I want to know, what is the difference?
Well, I think, like Adam's just said there, Nathan showed a maturity. He's had some setbacks in his career, he's had some setbacks in his Southampton career. He's still only 26, so you suggest that he's not in his prime yet. He's played a lot of Premier League games. I think he's played nearly 250 Premier League games. But it's always difficult, I think. I mean, I was an attacking player, so it's difficult for attacking players because they have to take risks. They have to, they look for that eye of the needle ball. They take a shot on. And I think the difference that Nathan's done, he was always a player that he looked really good on the eye. He would dribble the ball, he would direct, he would create things. You just wanted him to take that responsibility to take a shot on, to take that extra risk, to go for that extra delivery or pass. And I think Ralph has brought that into him, maybe given him a bit more belief, maybe encouraged him to do it, and playing a little bit narrower as well. He's not an out-and-out winger now. The formation, I think, suits him, so he gets into better positions to have a shot, to play a 1-2, some combinations with the striker. Now they're playing 2 up. So he's got a bit more freedom, and you can see that he's enjoying his game again. He's smiling, and I think that makes a huge difference. He looks a confident player that wants to take risks, that wants to take shots on him. We saw that last week with a well-taken goal.
And the other thing as well about, just back to his character as well, I'll just say as well, is what's interesting is we're talking about Prowse here, but Nathan Redmond has kind of stepped up as well a little bit from everything that I hear behind the scenes there as a leader. I know that has spent a lot of time, we've talked about Michael Obafemi, and you can kind of see the parallels between those two guys from everything that we've just discussed in terms of Obafemi kind of needing that extra composure, but also you kind of don't want him to not take risks because that's kind of his game has to be based on that, and Nathan going on that journey as well. And I know Nathan has spent a lot of time with Michael, and he spent a lot of time sort of talking to him about his experiences, his mindset, sort of encouraging him as well. And I think that's a big part. He's become sort of part of the furniture at Saints over 4 years. As Dean said, still a young man, but kind of that growing maturity, I think, is also having an impact on his teammates and his younger colleagues as well. And I think that's a big positive, not just for him, but for the club in general.
Yeah, Dean, you did previously mention about his finish away at Norwich. All 5 of Nathan's goals this season have come away. What do you put that down to, and why do you think it's not been replicated at St Mary's?
I just think away from home, as the away team, you get a little bit more space on the counter-attack. So Nathan will get a little bit more room to run at players, to commit to players. When you're playing at home, the opposition can get a compact shape. The areas are smaller. It's more difficult to get into a rhythm when you're running with the ball. And away from home, you get them spaces on the counter-attacks. He gets a chance to get into 1v1 situations, to cut in, to have a shot. So I think that's the major difference, just the team you're playing against and the way and the philosophy they will play, home or away. You're just getting more room away from home to get into them opportunities.
Well, let's take a look at what's being said on our social channels from you, the fans, watching along at home. Sledger33 is watching on YouTube. He's going for a 2-1 win to the Saints tonight. He's going for Prowse and Ings goals. He loves a goal against Arsenal. Come on, you Reds, he says. So glad to see St Mary's again. Yeah, aren't we all? So good to be back home. Even though we're not there. We're pretending we are. Hopefully they can hear us at St Mary's. Stephen Bull, he's watching on Facebook. He says, let's go, mighty Southampton, watching from Wales. And Roland has said stadium looks fantastic. It really, really does, doesn't it? Well, let's recap the team news very quickly for any of you who have just joined us on Saints Live and may not have caught that when we broke that at 5 o'clock. You can see it on your screens there now. Alex McCarthy, Jan Valerie, Jack Stevens, Jan Bednarek, Ryan Bertrand, Pierre Hoiberg, our captain James Ward-Prowse, Stuart Armstrong, Nathan Redmond, Michael Obafemi and Danny Ings. So our boss has named an unchanged starting 11 to take on Arsenal.
Yeah, indeed. Now, we played Arsenal earlier in the season, and in case you missed that one, victory was snatched from us in the dying minutes, but we're going to now have a little look at the highlights of that game.
The Premier League returns after a fortnight's international break. It's now full on for the next 3 months, match after match, as the season starts to take shape. Short pass to Redmond. Redmond trapped by Chambers. Chambers knocks him over off the ball. Easy free kick as the former Saint fouls him, and they take it quickly. And they've got him behind. Ings in the box. Ings hits the post and it goes in. And Southampton had the lead at the Emirates. Danny Ings yet again in the 8th minute gives Southampton the lead. Ings has 6 goals in the Premier League. It comes down the left from Tierney, cross into the box. It's got to be Aubameyang, shot blocked by Bertrand. Second chance, 1-1. Lacazette on the turn, right-footed. And suddenly Obafemi has it on the left. Bertrand stayed up with him. He scored here before, remember. Bertrand goes on the outside and the ball played in, and Saints want a penalty. And Stuart Atwell has given a penalty. Ings fouled. Leno bounces on his line. Ward-Prowse saved, gets the rebound and scores the rebound. James Ward-Prowse slams it in left-footed. They run away to the Southampton fans and celebrate. Thousands jump up happy. Saints lead at Arsenal again. Aubameyang, it's gone out on the left wing to the byline, pulled across. There's going to be an equaliser. Poked into the roof of the net. There's no problem with the goal. There's no offside. I don't know what you think at home, but you've got to be more encouraged by this performance. The Arsenal fans boo, but it's Saints who are crushed, because Arsenal should have been dead and buried.
Well, I think it's fair to say that it's been a bit of a dismal restart to the season for today's opponents, Arsenal. And as we've just seen, it was a point apiece the last time the two sides met. Not only that, it was also your last game at the Echo, Adam. So I'm sure an emotional day for you for many reasons. What can you remember from that day?
Well, yeah, I guess on a personal note, people don't want to hear too much about that. But yeah, it was an emotional day for me. It was an emotional week, to be honest. But the nice thing for me was I very wisely guessed that I would probably be quite emotional, so I booked a holiday. So I went straight from the Emirates on the tube to Heathrow and got on a plane and flew to New Zealand. So I kind of recovered a little bit then, though I did file my last match report with my laptop balanced on a concrete bollard in the Heathrow short stay car park. So it was a weird way to end, but on the front of the game, it was it was a good performance from Saints. It was kind of what they needed. They were in the doldrums really at that point in the season and starting to get a little bit worried, I would say. But kind of a great performance, a really solid point. Unlucky in a way not to get all 3, given how late the equaliser was, and they kind of took that form on. Then they won a couple of games in a row, and they had a run where they only lost 2 out, I think 7, picked up 5 wins, and really that was the turning point. And I think Ralph likes playing Arsenal because, of course, it was that big performance not long after he took over in 2018 that kind of really was the catalyst for the revival that season as well. So I think Ralph knows how to play an Arsenal type team. We've seen him do it before. And Saints have a pretty good record against Arsenal in recent years, which is no mean feat considering, yes, Arsenal are obviously a club somewhat on the slide, but they still have fantastic quality of players. And I think, if you want to just take a look at how the season's gone, I think it was 13 points between the two teams on that day at the Emirates. And if Saints win today, they'll be level on points with Arsenal. So, I mean, that kind of shows the trajectories that both clubs have been on since that day.
Yeah, I'm sure Ralph will be rubbing his hands together at playing Arsenal tonight. They've had a torrid start to the season, losing both of their games since the restart. But Dean, how do you think their season has gone as a whole overall up until now?
Well, for the club the size of Arsenal, it's a poor return, really. Sitting in 11th place for the quality they have. For the size of the club, the stature of the club, the history of the club. But I understand it as well. They're in transition. The new manager's come in. It looks like he wants to play with more energy. Younger players that are looking to develop with the club, that are willing to listen and learn. But yeah, similar weaknesses for Arsenal, similar problems. They're good going forward, they're attacking, they're pleasing on the eye, but they're just too open. Defensively, they're poor. They make too many mistakes, and I think that's just continued this season, even with a new manager coming in. And it's something that needs to be addressed at that club, and something that a lot of people have looked at over the years, that are saying there's a defensive midfield and a couple of strong defensive-minded centre-halves at the football club to make it better. So it's been a poor season for them. I'm not sure where the manager's going with this, but I think they're looking to bring younger players through them and get an affiliation with the fans again.
Yeah, Arsenal looking at a bottom half finish potentially for the first time in 25 years. So they'll also be looking to pick up 3 points from St Mary's this evening. But if the fans have their way, that will certainly not be happening. Lots of positive vibes coming in across our social channels. James Pike, who is watching on Facebook, says he's going for a 3-2 win to the Saints. And he says up the Saints. Fusion Season is watching on YouTube. Hello to you. They've said 2-1 win for the Saints. Come on. Isaac, also watching on YouTube. Good afternoon. He says, watching the Saints from Sri Lanka. Oh, wow, how glorious. Mind you, it's been pretty glorious weather here as well, Isaac. Chris Taylor, hello. He says, come on, Saints from Chesterfield. Big 3 points today. So the fans are certainly up for it. We can't be there at St Mary's. You can see it there now in all its glory. It looks absolutely wonderful, doesn't it?
Yeah, indeed, the sun's shining over.
I know, just so excited for the day we can finally be back there.
Right, so looking at today's game, we know that Arsenal haven't had the best of starts. Last week against Norwich, Saints played incredibly well, and that game was pretty open. But Dean, do you expect it to be the same today?
I think it will have similar traits, if I'm honest. Arsenal I'm not saying Arsenal and Norwich are on a par, but they play in a similar way. They're possession-based. They like to build up the play. Arsenal with a bit more energy and a little bit more direct in their approach. But there will be opportunities and spaces for Southampton to attack them, especially when they lose possession or they turn over the ball. Arsenal like to commit players forward, especially the fullbacks. They turn into wingers, really. So them spaces wide and in behind for the strikers and the wingers again are going to be there. So I think it's going to be a similar game. Yes, Arsenal have more quality. They have better attacking players. They're going to be a threat to Southampton. They're going to have to continue with that disciplined display from last week. But I can see the game panning out pretty similar, where there's going to be chances at either end. So it's whoever's going to be most clinical.
Adam, you said earlier that we obviously do have the opportunity to move level on points with Arsenal with a win today. And Dean, you said in last week's show that 40 is that magic number. How big of a milestone would it be if we could reach that tonight?
Huge, I think, especially like we spoke about last week, starting this mini-season with a win. Not only a win, but a confidence display, a very good display, performance. Can win today to get us onto 40 points and then have another game on Sunday against Watford with teams around us. You know, within the space of a week, 10 days, we've almost secured, we'll have secured Premier League football again next year, and then it's looking up. How far can we go up? Can we get into the top 10? So yeah, it'll be a huge, huge win, and obviously it puts us level on points with Arsenal, which is, like Adam said, you know, earlier in the season, you wouldn't have thought that would be possible. So for confidence, for points, for value, it would be amazing to get 3 points today.
Now, Adam, we talked about where Arsenal are on the table. Might not reflect the pace they have on the side, the attacking quality that they do have. Is being defensively disciplined something that Saints are really going to have to be today?
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal, obviously, it goes without saying. I mean, the look at the quality, look at Aubameyang. I mean, Pepe, what did they spend on him? 70-odd million quid. I mean, he might not have lived up to that kind of price tag yet, but I mean, you don't pay that kind of money for a guy who hasn't got a whole bag of talent. They've got plenty of talented players. So Saints are certainly going to have to be wary, but I think Saints have every reason to go into this game with confidence. I mean, we were talking, weren't we, after the last game, sort of that weighing up how good were Saints and how bad were Norwich in terms of the kind of result last time out. But there's no doubt that Saints are looking really confident. Danny Ings scored again, which is great for them. they've got every reason to be optimistic here. Yes, Arsenal have threats, but Saints have threats as well. And the one thing we know about Arsenal, as Dean said, is they are pretty weak through their defensive areas. They're pretty weak most of the time through the spine of the team. You can get around the outside of them as well. There are going to be a lot of opportunities for Saints. Yes, they need to be defensively alert as well, but given Arsenal's form and the lack of confidence they must be feeling right now, this is a game where Saints can have a degree of confidence. Normally when you play Arsenal, perhaps you don't have that luxury, but I think the Saints can go into this and think that they could match Arsenal, keep it tight, hit them on the break. There's 3 points on offer here, I think.
Well, with last week's trip to Carrow Road, we did, of course, discuss Southampton's fantastic form on the road. With today's return to St Mary's, we should really touch on the poor form at home. Dean, did you ever experience anything like that in your career, where the away form was better than the home form?
Yeah, towards the end of my career, actually. So when I was on loan at Sheffield United, we were poor at home. We just couldn't get the wins we needed. We couldn't... if we did win a home game, we couldn't back it up with a back-to-back win at home. And it can be difficult because it does play on your mind. There's expectation from the fans. Think about it too much. You try and do things that are not natural, that you wouldn't normally do. The opposition see it as an opportunity as well, because the record speaks for itself where you're not playing well at home. So it can become difficult. I think it's so important if you do win a home game to then back it up with another win. I don't think that's happened too much this season for Southampton. So, and your home form's so important. You base your season on it. But luckily for Southampton, the away form's been fantastic this year, which has really pushed them on. But it just can lay heavy on your mind, and you go into the game with. You don't play natural. You don't play with fluency because you're worried about we need to score the first goal. We need to settle down as a team. We need to settle the fans. So you start thinking about things. You don't live in the present. You're trying to control the future, and that becomes difficult.
And Adam, is the pressure too much at St Mary's at the moment? What are you kind of putting the poor home form down to?
Well, to be honest, I think if you reflect on it, you've got to say this is not something that's just occurred this season. Southampton have been poor at home for several years now. This is not a new phenomenon of struggling at St Mary's here. Really, since Ronald Koeman left, they have had problems at St Mary's. I don't really think it's the fault of the fans. I know some people seem to want to point the finger at the fans. I don't think it really is. I think, to be honest, there's two things. One, there's the mental side, as Dean said, and two, there's also the fact that I guess the way the Premier League has gone as well, a lot of clubs like Saints have got slightly less resources than the big clubs that have been able to invest vast amounts of money in incredible attacking talent, have played a more defensive game. And that's home and away. They play a more defensive game where they try and keep things tight, and then they try and exploit those teams on the counter-attack. And so there is perhaps a change in the philosophy for maybe 10 or more clubs in the Premier League, maybe even sort of 12 to 14 clubs, really. And that kind of is then hard to get out of sometimes when you perhaps are playing a team who want to come and do the same to you and sit behind the ball. And then you've suddenly got to change your game. You've got to find a way to unlock a very tight and disciplined and organised defence. And I think all of these things combined have kind of contributed to the problem. But I mean, I guess if you were a scientist now, you'd be saying, well, you're removing a variable in that you're removing the fans. So we'll wait and see what does happen. But like I said, I think more the sort of general scenario, the confidence and the way the team has been set up has probably been the large problem, along with, of course, a certain amount of pressure at key moments as well.
Well, before we move on to our final talking point of the show, let's go back to your fan comments. Lots of them flooding in, and I absolutely love this one. This is from Chris Pratt. He said he's watching on YouTube. He says, "Come on, you Reds. I'm sat watching at work in Eastleigh." And I could just picture him with his iPhone under the desk, trying to hide it from the boss.
I thought it might be the actor Chris Pratt then for a sec. We might have a Hollywood star watching.
Maybe we do. Who knows? But anyway, thanks for joining us, Chris. Hopefully you don't get in too much trouble watching us at work. Englishman123 is watching us on YouTube. He says, "Come on, you Saints," watching from Northern Ireland. Terry Smith is also joining us on our live stream. Good afternoon. She says the Saints will be marching to 40 points today. Well, we certainly hope so. Simon Grant, hello. He's on Facebook. He's going for a 2-1 win to the Saints today. And we also have a birthday amongst the Southampton family. Pauline from the Isle of Wight turns 70 today. Have an absolutely fantastic day. Now let's go back to our two guests, Dean and Adam, for our final discussion before kick-off. I feel quite comfortable talking about this now. Now that we've kind of, we're climbing clear, we know that Liverpool will win the league, so all eyes seem to be on the relegation battle. How do you kind of see that relegation picture at the moment?
I think it's between probably 5 teams. The teams down at the bottom have all got something in common, and they're struggling to score goals. And they're letting goals in. And when you're letting goals in and you're not scoring, you're under pressure to keep clean sheets, and that's really difficult in the Premier League, especially with the type of players and the quality of players you're playing against every week. So it's, you're based on, there's an old saying in football, you're only as good as your strikers, and that's one thing that Southampton have got. They've got very good attacking players, scoring goals to create opportunities. So the relegation battle, I think it will come down to whoever, a striker within them 4 or 5 teams, can find a little bit of form and find 2 or 3 goals, or a midfield player that can come up with a couple of goals that can help out the team. So it's tight, but I think it's between probably 5 teams. And I'd probably suggest the teams that are in the bottom 3 at the moment will be the teams that get relegated.
Now, as Kenzie said, we know it's a matter of time until Liverpool actually win the title. They beat Crystal Palace 4-0 last night. Adam, Manchester City have to beat Chelsea away tonight. How do you think that one's going to go?
Well, I mean, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Pep's already talking about focusing on other competitions. Obviously, Aguero being out now for a while is a bit of a blow to Man City as well. So it'd be interesting to see what he does in the Premier League. I mean, I say that almost as if, like, in another club, you'd probably say, oh, maybe he'll give some of the kids a go. But you've seen the Man City bench. I mean, it's embarrassing, to be honest. It is so chocked full of players that would get into pretty much all bar 1 or 2 of the rest of the Premier League starting 11s quite easily. So maybe he'll look at some other players. Maybe he'll experiment a little bit, I suspect, which makes it slightly more unpredictable. But I think for Pep, he kind of feels now Liverpool obviously have the title. What is there to play for? Well, there are other things to win. So I kind of fancy he might start to take one eye off of the Premier League a little bit. That will open up a few chances for some other teams. That said, the quality and the depth of quality in Man City's squad, wow, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to pick an 11 out of their squad that wasn't extremely good. So they're still going to be tough opposition.
Well, yes, Liverpool can win the league tonight. Of course, all of our attention will be firmly on the action at St Mary's. Gunners, the opponents this evening. We will be back for our post-match show as always. But before we let you go and prepare for kick-off, Dean, Adam, score predictions for today's game.
I think 2-1 Southampton. I think it'll be another Southampton win. I think they'll get that win at home. And I think they'll get opportunities to score goals. The forward players especially, are in form. As long as we're disciplined with our shape, there'll be opportunities on the break, and the pace and the directness we have in the team. I think 2-1 tonight.
Well, I was actually going to go 2-1, but I'm not going to now to make things interesting. So maybe I'll be more cautious, and I'll stick for 1-1. I think Saints have got a good chance, but Arsenal's quality, and I also guess for Arsenal, they surely know this is a kind of a big game for them now in their season, because if they were to especially if they lost this one. But even if they draw, really, I mean, they're going nowhere then. They're completely stumped, and they might end up there anyway. But you'd like to think that if Arteta's kind of going to take this team on, he would be able to motivate them enough after a couple of bad results to want to at least go out and put in a performance which would make them more dangerous. So yeah, I'm going to go 1-0. I'm going to stick with 1-0.
Okay, well, both guests feeling fairly confident. I'll go with Dean's prediction rather than yours, Adam. But Steve, you feeling confident?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Dean. I think it's going to be 2-1. Looking at Arsenal's, their form and then also the injuries and suspensions they have too. But I do think Arsenal will score first.
Okie dokes. Well, it remains to be seen what will happen. Under half an hour to go now until kick-off. Myself, Steve, Dean and Adam will all be back for the post-match show. So make sure you rejoin us after the final whistle.